Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today we have a guest on the show who was already on the podcast before, episode number 13, you may remember. Her name is Kimberley Barker and she is from Buffalo, New York. Kimberley, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk with you again.
Kimberley, today is an exciting day for you because you've just left the corporate world, I understand.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's been a long journey to get where I want to be, but I'm finally here after continuing to keep my eye on the goal of my dreams, and it's a little bit surreal, but I'm finally here, and I'm really excited to see the next new chapter of my life unfold.
Great, that's very exciting times. And can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started with Airbnb hosting?
Sure. So I am a writer, and that is going to be my full-time occupation going forward. And I write in the morning when I get up, and I spend a couple hours studying and writing before I went into the office. And I was just kind of searching around the internet, just, kind of spending some creative time in the morning, and I bumped into Airbnb, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I want to do that. So I thought about it for a while, and then the first time I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know, it's in my house. And then about a year later, I'm like, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to do it. I think this is going to be a great opportunity. I want to meet some new people. I love to entertain. I love to have people in my house. I love different cultures. So I just decided on a Saturday, I think it was, my girlfriend and I cleaned out a room in my house. I put the site up. I had my first booking that night, and it's been an amazing journey. Since then, it's been almost 2 years now. I've had 2 summers. This will be my second holiday season. This past summer, I opened up a second bedroom. It's been wildly successful, and I have people in my house almost every day.
That's great.
Yeah, it's just super exciting.
Now, you've already shared most of your experiences in episode 13, but the reason that I wanted to invite Kimberley back to the show is because she recently had a very, very special experience, and I would love for Kimberley to share it with our listeners. So Kimberley, tell us, what happened?
So it's got to be almost 2 months ago now. I had a guest who sent me a message in the wee hours of the morning, like 2 o'clock, and my phone was right next to my bed, and I'm a very light sleeper, so they had sent me the request for that day. The next, what would be the next evening, but it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and it would be 6 o'clock that evening. He had no picture on his profile, which I typically do not. I always ask people for a picture before I will even accept their request. So he said he couldn't do it. He was in the airport. He was taking a red eye to Buffalo to see his girlfriend. So my intuition just said, accept the request, and I did. He came that evening, and with barely anything, a backpack, and I said, he was a young guy, like in 25, college student, and I said to him, is that all you have? He was going to be here for a couple of days. He's like, yeah, I'm only going to stay for a couple of days. I'm here to help my girlfriend. I said, is something wrong? And he said, well, she's sick. And I said, well, I work in healthcare. I'm a healthcare executive. And I know a lot of people in this community, and I could help you. He said, well, she's pregnant. I said, oh, okay. So she had gone to he explained to me that she had gone to the clinic at the university. They gave them a whole listing of doctors. I said, well, why don't you let me take a look at the listing? I'll let you know who would be the better people to go to. And so he handed me a list of doctors that were all abortion doctors. And I said, oh, well, I immediately said a quick prayer in my head. As we all know, it's a sensitive subject for anybody. And, he spoke English pretty well. He's from China. Mm-hmm. And I just prayed that the right words would come to me to help him and his girlfriend. So I said, is this what you want? I explained to him in English what they had given him. And he said, no, I don't want that. And I said, well, you have a choice. I just want you to know that. I'd be happy to help talk this through with the two of you. And he just kind of looked at me and with very sad face. And I said, okay, what do I do next? This is what I'm thinking in my head. And I'm like, food, great, food. Food always, food solves everything.
Chocolate cookies.
Yes, well, I didn't make cookies, but I said, I was having dinner at the time, and I said, do you want to join me? And I'll get back to the cookies in a second, because the cookies play a huge part in this as well. So I said, I'm making stir fry, which I never even, put two and two together. Do you want to help me? He's like, great. So he chopped vegetables like no one's business, and we cooked together, and which gave me a great opportunity and a kind of a segue to start conversation with him about this very sensitive topic. Uh-huh. And as you can imagine, from a cultural perspective, being in China, it's, I needed to make sure, because from a cultural perspective, this is a topic that is, to them, abortion is looked at differently than it is in the United States, and I needed to be really sensitive and be really sensitive to them.
So just to be clear, Kimberley, so that everyone understands, your guest is originally from China, but was living in the U.S.?
He was in San Francisco in school.
Okay. And his girlfriend lives in Buffalo.
His girlfriend is they both just entered school. It must have been, it's the month of August. So it's been a couple of months that they just started school. She is in a doctoral program here at the University of Buffalo, and he was in a university in San Francisco. They both had moved to their respective schools over the summer, but are originally, one's from North China, the other one's from South China.
Okay.
So that's the context. I mean, they hadn't been in this country too long.
Uh-huh. All right, cool.
So they had just come to this country. So so that said, he went to get his girlfriend from school that night. They came, he brought her back. We started having some discussions about this. And I said, I just let them talk to me, and I just really said, you know what, you have some choices. Here are your choices. But certainly it's up to you, but understand that this is a decision that you will, whatever you decide, will impact your life for the rest of your lives together, whether you're together or not. But just be okay with your decision, and certainly talk to your parents before you make any decisions. So it was, the next couple of days were tricky. I actually had talked to them about, they had some medical concerns. Mm-hmm. And the good news is I have a ton of access to a ton of doctors and nurses. So I talked to some medical people about their concerns, relayed that back to them. And so we talked through this in the next couple of days. I was able to make an appointment with them for a doctor who could sit down and explain choices to them on the following Monday. So his 2-day stay turned into, at this point, a week.
And the girl was also staying with you, or just him?
He asked me if she could stay that night, and I said, absolutely, you can stay with him. And so the two of them ended up staying with me.
Okay.
And that Sunday before the Monday medical visit, she ended up, I usually make breakfast for my guests on Sundays. It's a great opportunity for us to get to know one another and just to really have a nice time eating really good, healthy food and getting to know one another. And so we were having breakfast. She was still sleeping. She came out of the room and she said she didn't feel well, that she was having some problems. And I said, you need to go to the ER right away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that something's wrong with the baby. So she said she didn't want to go. She needed some sleep. She decides to go to sleep. She wakes up another half hour. They end up going to the ER that day. They were in there for hours and hours, and I ended up talking this through with them over texting, and it turns out that it was an ectopic pregnancy situation, which is basically the baby is in the tube, and it's not good for the mother from a life perspective. So I talked with them when they came home, and I said, sometimes God just makes decisions for us, and this will be okay, and you will get through this, and we will, you want to talk to me, you can talk to me, but you need to call your parents and just have some together time and know that this will all be okay. So they stayed with me for a couple more days. The hospital had given her some injections. A couple more days went by. The injections weren't working. They went back for a second one. It turns out that he had to stay in school for a certain number of days because with their country, there's some visa limitations and with staying in this country, etc. So it ended up that I woke up one day, he was gone. He had to take a red eye back to California to finish out that classwork, or he would have been sent back to school, or to China, excuse me.
Right.
So that day I said to her, I think this is your follow-up appointment, right? And she said, yes. I said, well, I'm taking you because I kept an eye on her medically during this time that they were with me. And now we're probably in week 3 of their stay. So what was originally a couple days has turned into 3 weeks at this juncture.
And you didn't have to cancel any other reservations?
Pardon me?
You didn't have any other reservations coming up?
I did during this time, and it turned out that I was, I had opened up a second room before they had come here. So I was able to accommodate all my other guests at the same time. So I was able to take care of them and them, the additional guests and them. And, it just kind of, the universe just kind of worked it out that I was able to handle this with them at the same time. So the day he went back to San Francisco to finish out his schooling, she went back for her follow-up appointment. I told her, call me, let me know how it goes. Because she said that she had been feeling funny during the last couple days, but didn't express any pain. And so I just kind of kept an eye on her. So I didn't hear from her that day. I was working downtown. She texted me. Well, she actually called me. And she said, Kim, something's wrong. They're going to send me down to the ER. They sent her to the ER. I said, okay, call me. I'm getting ready to leave work. She called me. She said they want to do emergency surgery.
Oh, my God.
And she said, can you come? I said, absolutely. There was one last street before I got on the highway to come home. I turned around. I was there in less than 10 minutes. Got into the ER, got to see her. The physician came in the room. I said, tell me what's happening. She's going to have emergency surgery. So I said, okay, let me explain this to her. She spoke pretty pretty good English, but she had never had surgery before. She's in a different country. It's a totally different medical system than in China.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to her, have you ever had anesthesia? No. I tried to explain to her it's like having 10 drinks when you wake up. That's all I could come up with, right, Jasper? I'm like, oh, how do I explain this to her? So I didn't want her to be frightened when she woke up and that she couldn't, be totally aware. And I had to explain to her that she was going to lose one of her tubes, and that it would no longer function. That was a really hard discussion for me to have with her, because she looked at me and with tears in her eyes and said, please don't let them do that, Kim. And I said, it's to save your life. They have to save your life, and you will be able to have plenty of babies with one.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to save your life. And she looked at me and I looked at her. We looked at each other in each other's eyes, and I said, you need to do this. So the doctor says, and who are you anyway? And I said, it's a really long story. I said, I'm the closest thing she has to family here in the U.S., right? So I said, please just let me help her understand everything. So the doctor said, okay. And I said to her, you need to tell the doctor you can talk to me, that she can share this stuff with me, because in this country, there's all these privacy laws,
mm-hmm.
right? So she did. And, I helped talk her through this. And then the doctor said, okay. And, we're going to be ready in about an hour. So she's so sweet. She goes, Kim, you need to go home and feed your cats. You haven't had dinner. I go, forget that. They'll survive and I will survive. I'm staying here with you. And she had a number of her Chinese friends who had come to be with her. So I had to try, and they could not speak very good English at all. So I had to try as best I could to explain to them what was happening. And then she interpreted to them so that they could understand. And so they went and had dinner, and I stayed with her. And she asked me about what was going to happen during the surgery. Some very intimate questions about what would happen, because she was scared.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to her best I could that it would be okay, and even though she was sleeping, everything would be okay, because she was frightened about what would happen when she wasn't aware, right? She thought that surgery would be like when people die and they lose all their faculties. She thought that was what's going to happen. And I said, no, honey, that's not going to happen here. So I went to the OR upstairs with her. The OR nurses were like, okay, who are you? Why are you with her? I said, again, a long story. I said, I'm the closest thing to family she has. She wanted to keep her contacts in. She was thinking that she could see the OR and the whole thing. I said to the nurses, I said, she needs to take her contacts out. They're still in, blah, 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 blah. So she went into the OR. I was trying to keep it together because I was near tears, because this hospital is where I started my healthcare executive career. And when I was close to her age, I was in the same situation medically, similar to what she is, as far as losing one of her reproductive parts. And it was just so, the irony and how it struck home to me was just, you just have to know that there's a bigger force in the universe that brings people together for reasons unknown to us. I just knew at that point that we were meant to be together, and I was meant to deliver this message to her, and I was meant to be there to hold her hand and help her through this, knowing I was her age in experiencing the same thing. So I waited and waited until the surgery was over and her friends were there, and they came back, and then the doctor came out and looks at all of her Asian friends and says, "Miss Barker?" And I said, "That would be me over here in the corner." He goes, "And you are?" I said, "Again, a long story." So he said, "I have to tell you, it's a really good thing that she's here because she was bleeding. Everything ruptured. She was bleeding in her stomach. She could have lost her life."
Wow.
And, at that time, I'm just like, you know what? You can't even tell me that God doesn't work in the most mysterious ways ever. So I said, let me see her before any of her friends do. And so I walked down the hallway, and she didn't even see me. She heard me. And in this very small, petite voice that she has, she said, "Kim, I'm so happy you stay with me." And of course, now I want to burst into tears. And I knew that I had, I never thought about leaving her to begin with, but if, it was just such a confirmation if I had done the right thing. And so I eventually got to her, and she's like wrapped like this beautiful China doll with all these blankets. And at that point, when I looked at her, I just then knew what it was like to be a mom. Because unfortunately, I have never had the opportunity to be a mom. Because it's a similar situation that happened to me when I was her age. And it was just such a heartfelt moment for me and for her. And she had told me this story during the week about a woman it's a Chinese myth about a woman who got stuck in the moon. And it's this Chinese myth, and it's a beautiful myth about these 9 brothers. And so the only thing I could come up with to talk to her about to start the conversation was, and the moon at that point in the night, because I had walked outside while I was waiting for her. And I said, "Luna, the moon is beautiful, and I saw the woman stuck in the moon today," and it made her smile through all this anesthesia. And she starts talking to me about the story. And this nurse is looking at the two of us. So I gave her a kiss, and she looked at me, and she said, "You need to go home and feed the cats. You've been here so long." I said, "I'm not going anywhere until I know you're safely in a room and you're okay." So we got her up in a room, and I stayed with her until I knew, she was going to be okay. And 2 of her friends stayed with her. And I said, "I will pick you up tomorrow, and you will come back to my house, and you will recover at my house." And so sure enough, I picked her up around noon the next day, and helped her with some things. In the meantime, her professor in the doctoral program was threatening to dismiss her from the program because of her attendance. And I told her, I said, "There is no way that's going to happen. I will go to that school. I will do whatever it takes. Don't you worry." And so I was able to get the nurse to write an excuse for her for an extended recovery time. And she's like, "Kim, thank you so much," because I knew she was in no shape to go back to school in the next couple of days. Even though the doctor said she was, I just knew it wasn't. And so I had talked to the nurse, and I said, "You need to write her a note for the next 2 weeks. She's not going to be in any shape." So I brought her home with me, and all this time I was continuing the texting conversation with her boyfriend, letting him know how she was doing. And then when I brought her home, he flew back from California that next day on a red eye. And together, the 3 of us, just focused on her recovery. And she did really well. I mean, about a week later, she was good to go. And I knew the 2 of them wanted to stay with me until the semester ended, but I also knew that they needed to start their life together, because he made a decision. He had finished his coursework in San Francisco and made a decision to stay to finish out her term here in Buffalo. So they found an apartment, I knew that was the right thing to do, is let them start their life together. And so they made dinner for me the day they were going to leave, and she was crying, I was crying. He was in the, I'm in the kitchen, she's in the bedroom getting her stuff together, crying. They had made a beautiful dinner for me, all of Chinese food. And she told me that they would name their first child after me, which killed me, made me cry even more. So we have, so they went on to their apartment, and we have seen each other many times since then. And they're doing very well, and she's fully recovered. And we carved pumpkins last week, Sunday, together, because they want to experience all the American holidays. And we roasted pumpkin seeds. And then one of my other guests, who is a repeat guest, her daughter goes to the university here as well as a grad student. Her daughter and her boyfriend joined us. And everybody brought some food, and we carved pumpkins together and had a great time. And so they are so much a part of my life now. A story with a very happy ending.
Wow, I'm speechless, to be honest. What an incredible story. It's,
Airbnb has no idea what they have brought into people's lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to say a few things. First of all, this is obviously a really challenging situation for you as a host, and also a very unfortunate one for your guests. I want to say I think you handled it in a really incredible way.
Thank you.
And I'm really happy that you were willing to share this story, because, one of the things about Airbnb, it's about connecting people. And by enabling people to connect, friendships are formed, and sometimes lives are changed. And that's how you feel right now about your life. Meeting this person means a lot, I can tell.
Oh, they're such a huge part of my heart. And if there was ever any doubt that I was not doing the right thing by doing Airbnb, it certainly was a confirmation. And, when I recently, over the last couple of months, I had a new boss at work, and he was not a leader that I would ever emulate, and was really giving me a hard time. And, I found myself in a situation where I didn't have as flexible a schedule to meet my guests, and because of some things that he had put in place. And my mom and I had a conversation. She said, well, you're going to have to give up your Airbnb stuff. And I said, nope, that's not the answer. I'm going to have to give up my corporate job, because I'm meant to do this in my life right now. And I'm meant to be a writer and motivate people to help change their lives. And that was a deciding factor. And I knew with those Chinese people in my life that was the right decision. And I don't look back. I know it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's incredible. You basically helped save a life from somebody that you never met before, and I can imagine it must have been a very emotional time, and it's a sad but also a very beautiful story, and it's just incredible. And thank you so much for sharing this. I can tell even when you're telling the story, it still affects you emotionally. So
Yes.
I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to share this with our listeners. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to add to the story?
No, I guess the message here is, strangers unaware, right? And gifts and we need as people to open our hearts to others, because you never know how much they're going to bless your life. And I guess to me, that's the message of this whole thing.
I think those are great words to end this episode with. Kimberley, again, thank you so much for sharing the story. It's really, really amazing, and I really respect how you handled the situation, and I think it's amazing how you took care of your guests. So with that, we have reached the end of this episode. If you do want to find out more about Airbnb hosting, as always, you can listen to this podcast on Monday and Thursday. And if you want to have more information about our book, Get Paid for Your Pad, you can find it on Amazon, and you can also download the first 3 chapters for free on getpaidforyourpad.com. Kimberley, thanks again, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show another time.
Oh, thanks so much, Jesper. I look forward to seeing you this month in San Francisco.
Absolutely. The Airbnb open.
Yes, I'm excited about it.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and enjoy your day.
I will. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.